I'd like to welcome you to today's final session. My name is Christina Voigt. I am a professor here at the law school. I'm a colleague of Beate, and I'm a great admirer of Beate's work, and I don't think it needs any more proof than this conference to see the professionality and excellence and relevance of your work and the work of your research group. Beate entrusted me with the task of chairing this session, which is titled Reform Proposals, Supporting the Shift Towards Sustainable Companies. And I would like to invite the first speaker of the session, which is Dr. Priscilla Schwartz. She is Senior Lecturer in Law at the School of Law and Social Sciences, University of East London, and Priscilla will be talking on the subject of corporate socializing and environmental sustainability in Africa.
Thank you very much, Christina, for that introduction. Let me first take this opportunity to say thanks to Betty and the organizers. As a founding member of the Sustainable Companies Project, I think you guys have done a fabulous job so far. Today, I'm going to talk to you about corporate socializing and environmental sustainability in Africa. Now, which part of the problem of unsustainable business is my paper addressing? My paper deals with the problem of unsustainable business practice in mining activities, particularly in Africa, where corporations are driven by the pursuit of social objectives and representation than environmental aspects of sustainability and mitigating climate change. So my goal here is to highlight the fact that CSR, as practiced in mining, has a potential to undermine environmental aspects of sustainable development, and to illustrate the inadequacies of the environmental impact assessment legal framework for promoting environmentally sustainable development. The current legal and regulatory framework for mining companies in Africa is biased towards social objectives. I argue that this sustains, owing to the lack of a universally definitive legal character of CSR, which makes it susceptible to be portrayed in priorities of some of its various aspects and elements, according to individual business preferences. And that is whether it's ethical aspirations, a legal regulatory framework, a market tool, or a risk management instrument. In the context of Africa, CSR is regarded as a framework for formulating and implementing the expanded roles of corporate sector. It's specifically articulated for mining and other extractive industry sectors to include concern for employment and labor, human rights, the environment, social and community development. Obviously, these ingredients on the face value represent a dossier for development, as it were. This perception, as you can see, mirrors the elements of the European Commission definition of CSR and the ISO 26000 guidance on social responsibility. But in spite of the inclusion of the environment in the CSR conception for African minerals regime, the social aspect does overshadow it. Now, EIA is one of the most significant set of tools that has been developed to enhance the place of environment and social considerations in the making of mining decisions. And all African countries have in place EIA legislation and regulatory procedure. The EIA enables mining companies to obtain financial approvals upon demonstrating through comprehensive EIA reports that they have considered the environmental and social impacts associated with the activities and that they have a risk mitigation plan. The standard for laws requiring EIA is to include a public participation component. So requirements for participation, whether implemented as an international standard or domestic legislation have become more socially oriented than environmental, both in objective and outcome. Some examples include constitutional provisions that impose obligations on state organs with respect to the environment through the right to clean environment in Uganda, for instance, but the emphasis here is that you make a representation and be heard as to the impact this will have on your rights. The IFC manual for doing business, the World Bank safeguard policies, public consultation and disclosure plans, all these are focusing or propagating the social element of participation, more or less. The UNEP principles, anti-corruption regulation, the International Mining Council principles, extractive industry initiatives, and so on and so forth. And the local communities sharing in mining revenue. Here, there are a number of countries who have introduced schemes for allocating portions of central government mineral revenues for institutions to local mining communities. But there is no such allocation for environmental purposes, either from the companies or for the governments. So, the social emphasis combined with the poor state of social and institutional infrastructure in most African countries means that corporate socializing increasingly defines corporate strategies and practice informing CSR as an aspect of sustainable development. Now, what is corporate socializing? I coined this term to describe conduct and processes established, created, or regulated by companies to fulfill or attain a desirable or moral purpose in the local communities in which they operate and the wider society. Such conduct, of course, deemed necessary to protect corporate business interests in the given society and within the industry worldwide. So, corporate socializing conduct and processes in Africa range from enhancing the social structures of communities, building homes for settlements, schools and health centers, provision of drugs for HIV/AIDS, including through social entrepreneurship ventures, the processes of consultation, public meetings and workshops, sponsoring causes of various stakeholders, funding studies and scholarships, lobbying, ventures, attending parliamentary hearings, publication of drafts of comments, exploring areas of consensus, presenting social and policy objectives, investment allocations on websites, financial reports, joining international standardization organizations, and so on and so forth. What is notable from this cocktail of processes is the absence of the environmental aspect of sustainability, heightened in whatever form. The environment cannot be resettled, nor can it enjoy charitable donation. So, what are my reform proposals? Why? And what am I expected to gain? The proposal is for mining companies to be able to strengthen the environmental aspects of sustainability by accounting for investment into environmental protection and management and related technologies clearly and specifically than currently stated in their financial reports. This is because the environmental impacts of mining remain unaddressed through the current CSR mechanism or the legal framework supported primarily by EIA mechanism. Now, I quote from a recent international study sponsored by the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa on minerals exploitation in Africa. Their concern is that while environmental considerations, and that's a quote, are given greater expression in policy formulation now than was the case 2 decades ago, the means by which to give weight to the heavy environmental burdens imposed by mining remain in a rudimentary state of development. The basic task of developing a framework which adequately incorporates environmental issues into the evaluation of the costs and benefits of a mining project has seen little advance. The application of standard instruments for assessing the regulatory impacts have not, in many African countries, developed deep roots. Now, this tied in with a recent problem that is developing, especially in Nigeria, where you have the oil pollution non-responsibility for certain polluting activities, because it is claimed that these would have ensued because of intervention. That is, the communities tried to steal oil illegally, and therefore pollution effects. And therefore you have a vacuum where the government cannot enforce that particular aspect of regulation, neither on shell company. And even when it was decided in the Netherlands, the case came before, the court refused to sort of like recognize that particular aspect. So there's still that vacuum, and I think this is because we have not taken environmental issues. Second, that they should to be able to emphasize or heighten or invest in environmental issues, they have to cut down the overwhelming goodwill of social causes that are not immediately, and this is my emphasis, that are not immediately related to their operational impacts because it is unsustainable practice in the long term. In the recent framework report on Africa's minerals regime, this was the concern of the study. And I quote, "For many investors, the path towards embracing CSR has been long and marked with various detours and obstacles. Too many focus on CSR projects that went beyond charitable donations to worthy causes or organizations meant a possible shifting away from core business environmental issues and a distracting faith that could lead to lower productivity, higher cost, and waste of human resources. Dealing with communities and related stakeholders was seen as a time-consuming, difficult, and compared to opening a Pandora's box of problems. Mine managers believe that no matter what level of CSR investment, people would always want more. They would constantly be knocking on the door." So certainly this is an unsustainable practice, and obviously there is need to be able to address this. Now, what are the concrete proposals? I'm here suggesting that, proposing that there is need to amend the EIA legislation. But there are legal implications for this because of the broad application of EIA regulation to various kinds of activities. And obviously there's the danger of foreign the question of expropriation or regulatory taking coming up because it's a regulatory answer. But there is still, this could be necessary because companies, in place of this, I am suggesting rather a focus on environmental reporting agreements where companies and governments can come into an agreement in a way that they can both apportion responsibilities as to who is responsible for what, so that countries are able to take most of their social responsibilities off the back of corporations and allow corporations to invest in the environmental issues that are currently lacking attention. Thank you very much. I would finish the paper and put it on the website so that you can see some of the other propositions. Thank you very much.